When it comes to sadistic health workers being portrayed on the big screen, no one beats Nurse Mildred Ratched.
Well, I have to disagree with you, Mr. McMurphy.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to ScreenLab, and today we'll be placing the microscope on one of cinema's most iconic villains. Stay tuned to know how her calm and confident demeanor doesn't necessarily translate to her being a nice person.
I want an answer to my question.
So, without further ado, here are the 5 reasons why Nurse Ratched is the most terrifying villain.
I thought we decided that issue.
Number 5. She's Hitler without the mustache.
Mr. Washington, make sure no one is missing.
Louise Fletcher first portrayed the tyrant nurse in 1975's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, a movie based on Ken Kesey's 1962 novel of the same name. Much like any job, workers have their limitations. But even if they are continually tested in their jobs, nurses are still bound by their duty to provide proper care. But when it comes to Nurse Mildred Ratched, she doesn't live with any moral code.
Close the window and lock the screen.
And even enjoys inflicting physical and mental abuse on her patients. Test her once and you don't get your medications.
Mr. Cheswick, you sit down!
Test her twice, and you'll be placed in isolation. Test her 3 times, either you're dead or sent to the operating room for a lobotomy. Either way, you're still dead. Basically, Nurse Ratched is the very definition of a tyrant. Instead of using her position to greatly improve the lives of her patients, she uses it to ruin their lives instead.
Those are very challenging observations you made, Randall.
The hospital staff seems to bend to her will as well, either fearing for their lives or simply becoming as sadistic as their head nurse. With this, Ratched controlled nearly every aspect of Salem State Hospital, and if it wasn't for Randall McMurphy's heroics at the end of the film, every patient would have died in the worst possible way.
I want something done!
Fletcher's terrifying portrayal resulted in an Oscar win for Best Actress, while also paving the way for psychotic female villains being portrayed more on the big screen.
All right.
In fact, the American Film Institute even ranked Nurse Ratched as the 5th greatest villain of all time, with only Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Norman Bates, Darth Vader, and the Wicked Witch of the West ranking above her.
Why, my little party's just beginning.
Emmy and Golden Globe winning actress Sarah Paulson will portray a younger Nurse Ratched in Netflix's new series, with the show exploring the rise and fall of everyone's favorite psychotic nurse.
Just thinking of all the things I'm going to do about it.
Paulson, who won an Emmy and Golden Globe for her role as prosecutor Marcia Clark in The People vs. O.J. Simpson, will be joined by a stellar cast in the upcoming psychological thriller. Judy Davis, John Briones, Cynthia Nixon, Corey Stoll, and Finn Whitrock have been cast to play significant roles, and it appears that Golden Globe winner Sharon Stone, best known for her work in Casino and Basic Instinct, is also making a big comeback as well.
Did I miss something?
Number 4. She's not your friendly neighborhood nurse. Nurses are known to exhibit 3 traits: empathy, care, and commitment. Without them, hospitals would simply descend into chaos. But Nurse Ratched isn't your typical nurse. She possesses 0 empathy, and she could care less about the people around her. She is committed though. Committed in making life a living hell for her patients.
Well, fine, Randall. That's a good start.
Ratched never uses her power to create chaos inside the mental facility.
I'm sure we can arrange that he can have it some other way. But I don't think you'd like it, Mr. McMurphy.
She instead rules with an iron fist, absent of any human compassion and empathy, and determined to steamroll through anyone who gets in her way. Unfortunately, Ratched's authority doesn't result in any type of positive outcome, only using her position to satisfy her own twisted needs. If you've ever heard of the Dungeons & Dragons alignment system, then it won't be hard classifying Nurse Ratched as lawful evil.
I've just never played Dungeons & Dragons with girls before.
Oh, don't worry, sweetie. No one has.
Basically, a lawful evil character is someone who imposes or upholds a lawful system, yet disregards the concerns of the people around them. In this case, Nurse Ratched and her patients. Other notable lawful evil characters include Darth Vader, who acts on the orders of Emperor Palpatine to kill every rebel and Jedi in the universe. Don Vito Corleone from The Godfather, who doesn't sell drugs, but is involved in other illegal activities. And General Zod from Man of Steel, who is bound by his duty to save his planet Krypton, even if it means killing millions of people on Earth.
Well, that's very good.
Sarah Paulson's Nurse Ratched seems destined to be another lawful evil character as well. But it appears she'll have to wreak havoc first before becoming the Nurse Ratched we all love to hate. Number 3. She doesn't lose control.
I'm sure some of the men would like to comment.
Nurse Ratched is a villain who can take you down without moving a single muscle. What makes her more dangerous is that she rarely loses control. Throughout the film, we see her getting provoked numerous times, from McMurphy's constant cursing to Charlie Cheswick's childlike tantrums.
Go ahead, sit down.
Even though McMurphy, played by Jack Nicholson, and other patients of Salem State Hospital band together to take down the nurse, she appears to be constantly one step ahead of her patients. That is, until McMurphy nearly chokes her to death at the end of the film. But we'll get to that later. One can argue that Ratched's position as the head nurse of Salem State Hospital is the reason for her calm and confident demeanor. But one should note that too much power often leads to chaos, and Ratched never uses her power to create chaos inside the mental facility. Aside from that, from what we've seen so far in the trailer for Netflix's Ratched, it's safe to say that the nurse has always been in control for the most part of her life. Flaunting a fashion style that definitely turns heads, telling a gas station attendant to
Bathe more often?
and exclaiming to John Briones' Dr. Hanover that hiring her was the best decision he ever made. If people could look that good while committing some terrible acts behind the scenes, then you know everyone in the show is essentially screwed the moment they set their eyes on Nurse Ratched. If the trailers are also any indication, then we'll be seeing Nurse Ratched in Netflix's upcoming show to be as sinister as her film counterpart. The show is developed by Ryan Murphy, the brains behind Nip Tuck, Glee, The Politician, and American Horror Story. If you're familiar with the show, then you've definitely seen Sarah Paulson a number of times. In fact, she portrays 10 characters throughout the show's 9-season run, including conjoined twins Bet and Dot in Season 4's Freak Show, Ghost Junkie Sally McKenna in Season 5's Hotel, Wilhelmina Venable and Cordelia Good in dual roles for Season 8's Apocalypse, and of course, journalist Lana Winters in Season 2's Asylum.
So I made him an offer I knew he couldn't refuse.
So, when it came to casting a pre-Salem Hospital Nurse Ratched, it's safe to say that Murphy didn't really have a hard time picking his leading lady. And for you curious cats out there asking if Ratched is any way connected to AHS, it isn't. But it will no doubt have similar themes to Season 2's Asylum, as well as connections to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Still there? Make sure to finish watching until the end of the video to know why Mildred Ratched is considered as one of the most terrifying villains of all time. Number 2. She relies on extreme measures.
We're happy to have you back, Randall.
There's always something about mental institutions that send chills down our spines. Although we may not fully know the full extent of what truly happens inside a mental facility, whether it be patients being tortured or nurses committing suicide, thinking about the possibilities undoubtedly gives us the creeps. Movies such as Shutter Island and Grave Encounters, as well as American Horror Story's Asylum, which stars Sarah Paulson in her best AHS role, perfectly portray the horrors being done inside these facilities. But if there's one movie that trumps everyone else, it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Take a cigarette break, boys. Easy.
Although the film is more of a comedy drama than it is horror, it focuses mainly on Nurse Ratched's actions and the extreme measures she takes to control the patients in Salem Hospital. In the movie, Ratched uses her patients' deteriorating mental conditions to her advantage.
How about it, you creep?
Instead of treating them, she actually makes patients useless, hostile, and dependent, oftentimes using methods that are generally prohibited in any type of health facility. She sends McMurphy to be given electric shock treatment as a form of punishment. She also takes away the patient's cigarettes, the only form of pastime they have, and probably the only thing that's keeping them sane.
Give him a cigarette, will you, Harding?
My last one.
Aside from that, she keeps the patients medicated with complete disregard of possible side effects, while constantly subjecting them to mental and psychological abuse.
Very good.
Also, if you rewatch the Netflix trailer, we see Paulson's character trying to give a fellow nurse some sort of experimental treatment. And we also see her in another clip appearing to be curious in what appears to be a surgical demo on a dead corpse. Disturbed? Well, here's another creepy tidbit for you.
Go ahead.
Ken Kesey actually based Nurse Ratched's character from a real-life head nurse he had met while working in a psychiatric ward. It's already hard imagining one real Nurse Ratched. How much more if there are hundreds of Nurse Ratcheds working in isolated mental facilities around the world? Yikes. And number 1.
I don't have to tell her. Your mother and I are old friends, you know that.
She is a manipulative psychopath. Undeniably the main reason why Mildred Ratched is one of the most terrifying villains to ever set foot on the big screen.
What do you think you are, for Christ's sake? Crazy or something?
Even if you strip off her credentials and lock her up in a room, a manipulative psychopath only needs 2 things: a working brain and a persuasive tongue.
The business of this meeting, Mr. Cheswick, is therapy.
Those were the only things Hannibal Lecter needed to get out of prison in Silence of the Lambs. The 2 things that Anton Chigurh needed to get his money back in No Country for Old Men. And most definitely the 2 things that Nurse Ratched needed to torment the patients of Salem State Hospital.
Do you want to say something to the group, Mr. McMurphy?
Of all the atrocities that Ratched did in the film, nothing beats the scene where she embarrasses and threatens Billy Bibbit, portrayed by Brad Dourif, after having sex with a ward nurse, which led him to committing suicide towards the film's ending. Billy, a victim of parental abuse at a young age, specifically physical abuse from his mother, resulted in a form of mental disorder that causes him to stutter and feel tremendous amounts of guilt and shyness.
Aren't you ashamed?
No, I'm not.
Ratched uses this to threaten Billy, saying that she and his mother are close friends, and will not hesitate to tell her what happened between him and the nurse. Billy initially stands up to Ratched, but would eventually falter after Ratched plays the guilt card.
You know, Billy, what worries me is how your mother's going to take this.
In an earlier scene, Ratched would do the same thing to McMurphy and the other patients. After the patients vote in favor to watch the World Series on television, Ratched tells McMurphy that his vote doesn't count, and informs the patient who voted that they don't even represent the majority of Salem Hospital.
Well, I have to disagree with you, Mr. McMurphy.
With this and all of the things that occurred throughout his stay at the mental facility, including seeing Billy lying dead, McMurphy eventually snaps and chokes Ratched, destroying her vocal cords, and also destroying her tight grip on every patient inside Salem Hospital. Unfortunately for McMurphy, he also would suffer a similar fate as he was sent to be lobotomized after his actions towards Ratched. Even though we won't be seeing Louise Fletcher in the Netflix series, it appears that Sarah Paulson will be filling in nicely for the Oscar-winning actress. With 8 seasons of American Horror Story under her belt, everyone seems to be in agreement that the reigning queen of horror is the perfect choice to play the younger and apparently more fashionable Nurse Ratched.
I beg to differ.
So, there you have it. Are you excited for Sarah Paulson's younger and stylish take on Nurse Mildred Ratched? Make sure to leave a comment below. And don't forget, Ratched will be streaming on Netflix this September 2020. If you enjoyed this video, then you'll also love the best hidden gems on Netflix. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And make sure to share this video if you love Sarah Paulson and if you love psychotic nurses. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.